So we are live, and hello and welcome to another MovieBoozer.com virtual pubcast. I'm your host, Ken Ekman, and I'm joined by Bill Arsenault.
Hey, guys.
I was going to say, you sound really unenthusiastic introducing us.
Bill Leon.
Oh, boy.
Hawk Ripjaw.
Hello.
And Ann B. Davis as Alice.
So I do want to point out...
You say that with good vibes. You don't say that with low vibes.
I wanted to state that I'm living in the Midwest right now. We're in the middle. It's died down now. But we're in the middle of essentially a hurricane grade winter storm that is called a bomb cyclone.
That's a cool name.
That's way cooler than it actually is. It's a lot of snow, although only 10 inches as of right now, but it's 80 mile per hour gusts.
Well, 10 inches that'll add the fuck up when the wind starts blowing, because you're going to get drifts that are like 5 feet tall.
I saw, actually, today I did have the pleasure of seeing the cartoonish image of a woman walking outside with an umbrella, and the wind turned her umbrella inside out. And I haven't seen that in a while, and I always like seeing that because it's just funny.
That happened to me.
But anyway, if I suddenly just disappear, it's because my power went out. Hopefully that won't happen. But it's been 200,000 blackouts, 200,000 customers affected in the Denver area by blackouts. So,
oh man,
statistically, I'm not in good shape. So we'll see what happens.
All right. Speaking of statistically not in good shape, we saw quite a few movies this week.
Some were good, though.
Or at least some of us did. I actually didn't see any movie that we're going to talk about today, so I'm going to be doing a lot of the listening. But we had
kind of a rough few weeks, ladies and gentlemen. We've been off air for a little bit, but we're back.
That said, we're going to begin with a documentary that has been the talk of the news for the last few weeks, Leaving Neverland. So, Bill Leon, you saw this.
Yes, all 4 hours of it, plus the hour the interview that Oprah Winfrey did with the two subjects and the director, which, in my opinion, is equal to, if not more, worth watching than the documentary, because Oprah Winfrey does a great job moderating this interview.
Interesting.
Yes. Oprah Winfrey herself is, I don't know how aware of this I was, but she apparently was molested as a child. So she definitely has a personal stake. She claims that everyone in the audience of the interview was also a victim of such. So, it's like I said, that is, even if you don't feel like sitting through all 4 hours of this documentary, it is 4 hours. The Oprah Winfrey interview is just fucking incredible. Like I was really like, damn, this is the old, this is Oprah back in the fucking 80s when she was really great. I mean, not that I don't know. I never followed Oprah like that, but I understand that like her fire was really back then. Am I wrong? Does anybody know about Oprah?
She's always been a very she's always kind of had the fire.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, yeah, she does a great job with that interview. The documentary, which premiered at Sundance, I think. And I don't know if it had more Michael Jackson music in it before, because I remember seeing an article that was like the Jackson estate issues a cease and desist. So like they don't. I'm pretty sure the Michael Jackson music that's used in this movie is like just under the bar of fair use, because you do hear like large snippets of his music in this thing.
Yeah, I would imagine that would have been a very awkward conversation to have with the the people that own the rights.
I'll get into that because that also applies to the interview. But this documentary follows two specific gentlemen, Wade Robson, who was originally born in Australia, and a guy named James Safechuck. Now, Wade Robson was a famous choreographer in the later 90s. He did music videos for like Britney Spears and the Backstreet Boys, and like he was kind of a hot commodity in the choreography world for a while. I've seen a lot of people since this documentary has come out talk about the fact that, like, oh, you know, he's hurting for money. He's filed for bankruptcy. What, you know, like, I don't know all the details. There's a lot of details people are throwing around. People are accusing this specific person of being a part of this documentary for money and lying about what Michael Jackson did. This other dude, James Safechuck, I don't see what he has to gain from this. And he seems so sincere in this movie. Like, it is this thing. I will warn anybody listening to our review, if child grooming or sexual abuse towards a child is a trigger for you, don't watch this, because it would, you know, if you know that you don't have the stomach for it, it will probably bring you to tears, because they get in depth, they get graphic, they talk about all this shit Michael Jackson did, not only grooming them as children, but basically, you know, charming their mothers because he was so famous and their mothers were so starstruck. And that also, like, I'm not exonerating the mothers from their actions. They're shitty fucking parents. And the documentary interviews both of their mothers, who kind of enabled what went on and what may or may not have gone on. Because regardless of sexual abuse, the fact that he spent so much time with these kids and openly admits to sleeping in the same bed with them, like, that's weird. And I get, everybody's always like, oh, Michael Jackson's weird, you know, all that stuff. But it's still like, no, these, if that was my kid, I would be like, no, I'm putting a stop to this immediately. There's a lot of, I mean, do you guys have any questions about this?
Well, I mean,
I saw part of the first episode, and I'm gonna probably get back on it and maybe probably watch it in a few increments, because I definitely wouldn't be able to. Did you watch it all the way through 4-hour marathon?
I took a break, but I took a break in between the first two parts. But yes, I watched it in the same day.
Wow.
I'd probably have to space it out over the course of a week or so, because
I'm pretty sure in fact, I know I watched, it was on Sunday. I watched the WWE pay-per-view in between the two parts.
Yeah, I think like
that's interesting. That's an interesting, triple feature or something.
Interlude.
Interlude,
child abuse is
no, of course not.
We have a issue with, so I definitely probably can't watch it all in the same sitting. But from what I saw, the first episode, it's a well produced documentary, and it feels very momentous.
Yes. Well, the thing, and again, like the controversy this thing is causing, I mean, there are people getting really extreme with it. Ethan Klein of H3H3 Productions, like, went on Twitter and then went on his podcast and was like, this is undeniable proof that Michael Jackson sexually abused these kids. And the fact of the matter is that it's not undeniable proof. It's a testimony. It's a very emotional, very believable, tormented testimony. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, nobody's got footage of him. Like, the only people that knows what happens behind closed doors is Michael Jackson and these at this point, men.
Right. Undeniable proof. To use that phrase, there needs to be something.
And there's not.
Like DNA evidence or video evidence or
the
something
fact of the matter is that there's not. Now, I've kind of been on the fence about the Michael Jackson thing for a few years. I remember when I was like 14 years old and like South Park came out with the Michael Jackson episode. I was like, yeah, you know, I'm immature. I'm like, he did that shit. But at the end of the day, like, there has not actually been proof that any of this happened. But at the same time, like, especially not so much Wade Robson, because from what I'm understanding about this person, he may have more to gain career-wise, financially.
Well, here's the thing. What exactly would someone have to gain by admitting something so horrible happened to them? I mean, in very rare instances, I could supposedly see maybe you get some sort of sympathy credit for something, but I don't think that translates into dollars very easily. Whenever someone says something like, "Oh, he's just out for the fame," I don't know. I mean, it seems to me there's a lot easier ways to be famous than to admit that someone took advantage of you in your youth, and there's a lot of ways that you're going to be challenged when you make a claim like that. That if it comes out, of course, then look what's happening to that Jussie Smollett guy. The truth is that whenever someone makes a claim that something happened to them, you can't be 100% certain they're telling the truth, because humans are weird and they don't they have motivations that drive them in all sorts of ways. And I would say my inclination is to is to feel for the situation and what they say that they've gone through, and unless the truth is we're not. I mean, Michael Jackson's dead, so there's not going to be a court trial or anything like that.
No,
that happens, at least not against Jackson himself.
If anything, it's going to be his estate fighting this movie, which they've already started to do. But if you want to appraise it from a perspective of court, this sort of a claim is, from a criminal perspective, you have to take the reasonable doubt aspect of it. And, there's been a lot of evidence mounting over the years about Michael Jackson. And I guess you have to decide for yourself whether you believe that, there's reasonable doubt involved here. Another thing
with Bill Cosby, I was a defender, at least, of not jumping to conclusions about him for a long time, simply because a lot of the claims were very vague and old. But then they kept mounting and mounting, and the stories were all matching up very similarly. Even people who didn't have any contact with each other had such similar and specific details that they shared, that I reached the point where I said, you know what? I don't see reasonable doubt here. I think there's no doubt that he did some pretty horrible things.
And he's going to jail.
Exactly. And, I don't mean to since I haven't seen the film, I can't speak to the actual quality of the film or anything like that. What I can speak to is that, am I completely convinced that Jackson's guilty or not? I can't say that for sure. I'm not an investigator, but the evidence is beginning to build, I shouldn't say beginning. The evidence has been building since the goddamn 90s.
Yes. Well, that's the thing, especially about Wade Robson. The guy who people say have something to gain from this, which is that he defended Jackson both in the early 90s, whenever that was, and also, I believe, in 2005, he testified for him as well.
Mm-hmm.
Corey Feldman and Macaulay Culkin still claim that nothing sexual went down in their time with Michael Jackson.
And we all know, that different people are treated different ways. So there's that's we don't want confirmation bias to get into this either.
Right.
It's the truth is that it's at this point, all I can do is really truly empathize as best as I can with the victims, because they clearly have gone through something traumatic. Whether it's what they're saying, I don't know. And I would say over time, the truth will eventually find its way free, I think.
Well, the director of this he said he wants to do a follow-up with other accusers. But so back to the movie, though, just to kind of wrap things up.
We are a movie review thing, so we need to deal with that.
I do, especially the other victim in the film, not Wade Robinson, but James Safechuck is his name. He comes off as just like I believe him. But the thing is with this movie is that even if they're lying about the sex stuff, they provide a lot of proof that their parents let them be too close to this grown man. Like he would send them faxes. He would be on the phone with them for hours. Like when they lived in like the suburbs, It's just like really weird shit that should be a red flag to parents. Like the parents are to blame here.
Yeah.
It really does. The documentary.
I would argue that Michael Jackson's parents.
Yeah, I
also.
get that. But it is just like these parents should have been more involved and been less stupid about it. The documentary is 4 hours long, but it is kind of like Wild Wild Country, where like every time you think you're about to get bored with what the information you're being given, like there'll be a twist and it's like you have some new information and you're like, oh shit, I got to keep watching.
And that's how I felt about the O.J. Simpson documentary.
Right,
the 30. It was, goddamn, I think it was like 7 or 8 hours long, and it was fascinating throughout. Just when you thought you'd reached the point where you'd had enough of it, something new was thrown in.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so you would say the 4 hours it earns its length.
So here's the one, as far as film criticism goes, like there's no dynamic filmmaking. This isn't an interesting documentary visually. They used exterior drone shots. Like if you cut out the exterior drone shots of this movie, it would probably be a half hour shorter. I swear to God. I swear to God. And that's
Neil Breen.
What? So that's not a good thing. But again, I will also say, like, if you go all the way with this, watch that Oprah Winfrey documentary, because that, again, like everybody seems so vulnerable. Oprah's asking the right questions, and I didn't walk away from the Oprah interview feeling like anybody was being dishonest.
Yeah.
And I think if somebody could have proved that, it would have been Oprah.
Yeah. Okay.
And Oprah knew Michael Jackson personally. Right.
Well, you know what? I think I will have to try to take a look and see it. Once I'm done watching bad movies.
Well, again, I do want to just put out there, trigger warning. If you have any kind of past history with childhood sexual abuse, I wouldn't say they get into people. A lot of critics I've heard say like they get into graphic detail. I wouldn't say it's graphic detail, but it's graphic enough to where it's like, if you think about it, if you visualize Michael Jackson with these kids, it is disturbing. Like they paint quite a picture.
Did you see by any chance Call Me Lucky?
I did not see that.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask because that's another film that deals very explicitly with child sexual abuse, and the comedian Barry Crimmins goes into a great deal.
I did watch that. Yeah, no. Okay, I thought it was a drama film. No, I know what you're talking about. I did watch that.
So the reason I was asking is I was curious if it's on that same level of detail, because Barry Crimmins does go into some pretty brutal detail about his own abuse in that film. And I'm just curious, is it not as graphic, or is it?
I would say it's a notch below, but it's okay. Yeah, no, that's a good comparison. That's pretty similar. Like as far as graphic, yeah, all right. It's not pretty,
right? Oh, I mean, it's literally impossible for that subject to be pretty.
Yeah,
that is the antithesis of pretty.
Yeah,
but
I don't want to repeat anything that they talk about in the movie, because just first of all, just watch the movie. But again, like I don't want to offset anybody that might be listening, because
and that's understandable. And I just wanted to, the reason why I asked about Call Me Lucky is I wanted to get a baseline for how detailed it is, and if it's in that area, or it helps me understand that a little better.
It's pretty close.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess it is kind of graphic.
Okay, so with that having been said, we will move on to the next movie on our list, which, Hawk, it's time for your day in paradise with a Madea family funeral.
Yeah, if the Madea movie's coming out, Hawk's going to review it. That's just the thing. Like Zach's in paradise for the movies for March, and speaking of the devil, holy crap!
Hey, what's up, buddy?
Zach, I was just saying that you sent out the emails for the for the movies for March, and you were kind of like, just like, hey, Medea's coming out, FYI. And I was like, yes, message received. And so I watched and reviewed a Medea family funeral. And this is, according to Tyler Perry, ominously, might I add, is the quote unquote final Medea movie after I don't know how many, like 12?
What was the last one? Medea's Witless Protection, or was it Medea's Boo?
Boo 2.
Honey Boo Boo, Medea Halloween.
Yeah, no. The Halloween sequel, which came out in 2017. But I saw that when I was in a different state for work, and it was terrible. But this one is also terrible.
Shock.
How many of them aren't terrible?
None.
None of them aren't terrible.
They're all terrible. Although I will say that the Medea family funeral is slightly less terrible than the Halloween movies.
Is it because of David Otunga?
Which is the weird thing about this movie. Just right out of
David Otunga to be in this?
Yeah, what? David Otunga's in it. Yeah.
Who's that?
Who the fuck is
Martin
that?
Luther King, dude.
David Otunga is I don't think he wrestles anymore, but he was a WWE wrestler for a while, an announcer.
You look that up.
Wait, what was that about Martin Luther King? He played Martin Luther King?
Who the fuck played Martin Luther King in Selma?
David Oyelowo.
I just confused the two.
Yellow with Otunga.
Yeah, David Otunga did not play Martin Luther fucking King. Okay.
Oh man, that just made my night.
But he is only.
I'm looking at pictures of Otunga, and I'm like, wow, yeah, that would be the most ripped Martin Luther King we've ever seen.
Yeah, he's in this movie, but only for a few minutes. He doesn't have a very big role.
Oh shit! He was born in Elgin, Illinois. I worked there.
He is married to Jennifer Hudson. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh really?
So this movie has a really weird tonal problem where, like, it's called a Medea family funeral. So obviously somebody dies and there's a funeral, but this movie is still a comedy to the point where it just kind of, you have a comedy and you have the Tyler Perry melodrama elements, but it just kind of like switches between them in a way that has never been so jarring in a Medea movie. Like, usually these Medea movies you and I watched a few of them. Did we do it for a shituary?
Yes.
Okay. Like, these movies have always had tonal problems, but this one is probably one of the worst in terms of that issue, because the plot of the movie is that this family, oh my god, there's characters and so much shit going on in this movie. So let me pull up IMDb and try to get some sense of who is who to give you some context to the events of the movie. So basically, the whole family is planning like
they're planning a funeral for a relative.
No, they're actually planning an anniversary for the patriarch of the family. His name is Anthony, and Anthony's wife is
Anthony Anderson.
No, hold on. IMDb is loading. My internet's
Anthony Mackie.
No,
it's a woman. God damn it!
I'm just gonna keep naming Anthony's.
That makes sense.
Vianne. Vianne is played by Jen Harper. So Anthony's wife, Vianne. Okay, so here's what's going on. Anthony and Vianne are the mother and the father, not respectively, reversed respectively. There is Sylvia, AJ, and another guy. AJ is cheating on his wife with his brother's fiance, and Anthony, the dad, is cheating on his wife with their best friend Renee.
Huh.
So everybody's cheating on everybody else. Everybody somehow ends up at the same hotel. Medea and everybody as well. Medea and Aunt Bam and Hattie and the dude is played by Tyler Perry. They hear a very, very loud sex coming from one of the rooms. It turns out that that's where Anthony is having sex with Renee and cheating on his wife. In the middle of their violent-sounding BDSM session, Anthony dies. He still has an erection, also, and that ends up being a running joke in the movie where he still has this raging boner.
Oh no!
And that's what kicks off the funeral part of the movie. Yeah, he just has a heart attack in the middle of banging his wife's best friend.
Is there a lengthy slapstick scene in which they continually try to close the casket, but his erection prevents it from shutting?
Yes, there is.
Oh no! There is.
Oh my god!
There is.
I just threw that out there because that was like the most obvious joke that would have been.
Did you go with it?
That's like a Farrelly Brothers joke back before they
you know
did
what?
Green Book.
To be fair, though, that was one of the only scenes in the movie that I actually laughed because the way that joke is started is actually kind of clever because they're at the mortuary and the mortician, who is this weirdly happy guy, he's like, "Oh yes, he died happy and content," and then there's a jump scare where his erection bangs open the bottom part of the casket.
Okay, that sounds kind of funny.
That was kind of funny. It was like he died happy, and it's like bang! It's like I actually jumped because it does a legitimate jump scare where his erection almost pops open the bottom half of the casket, and they're trying to like shove it back down, but it won't go down because he's still got an erection. If I want to be totally honest and fair, there are moments in a Madea family funeral that I did laugh, and I did genuinely laugh. Like Madea, again, played by Tyler Perry. Over the course of the past couple of movies, there's been this more prevalent running joke where at least her brother, Brian, Joe, the old guy with the white hair and stuff, who's always talking about weed and hookers. He is fully aware that Madea is actually a man in drag, and he points it out a couple of times. And then there are also a few lines where Madea, at the end of one of her lines, she'll just automatically at the last couple of words will just slip into Tyler Perry's baritone natural voice, and nobody ever comments on it. And it's kind of funny. Madea also has this tendency to misquote Bible verses in not just miss a word, like she completely fucks it up. Like at one point, right after Anthony has died, Renee is his wife is going upstairs, and Medea is like, the Bible say in 2 Timothy that the wages of the employed are the unemployed once you go back to work. And it's like, what? That doesn't make any sense.
That's so stupid.
There's so many stupid non sequiturs in this movie that end up being just funny because they're so random. And I got to give Tyler Perry some credit for just kind of being like, you know what, fuck it, let's just be weird. He added a new character
on this film. Why?
What?
So why are you selling me on this film right now, Chris?
I'm not telling you. Like I'll take it back in a minute. Tyler Perry introduces a new character called Heathrow, who he plays again. Heathrow is a man who's in a wheelchair because he doesn't have any legs, and he also had throat cancer because of what Madea called a 52-pack-a-day smoking habit. So
now, do you follow the plays? Is this a character from the plays?
I don't know. Is it?
I'm asking you. You're the expert here.
I'm the expert on the movies. This is the first movie that he's in. I haven't seen the plays, but
I mean, shit. I live in the Chicagoland area. I guess I could go see a Tyler. Fuck no, that's not happening.
Well, there is the farewell tour coming up this year, so you could have.
Brie Larson says Ken Ekman is the problem with film criticism. By the way.
No, Heathrow uses one of those electromagnetic the electric thing to his neck to be able to talk.
Oh yeah, right. Okay.
So he was actually a self-proclaimed Vietnam War veteran, which is why he doesn't have his legs. But the reality, according to Joe, is that he was sleeping with the wife of a mobster and got his legs chopped off as punishment.
Mobsters don't normally chop off your limbs.
Yeah, maybe
they'll break your limbs,
or maybe take your head.
Yeah,
right.
Like this movie
unless it was in Japan or something like the Yakuza, maybe they did it. I don't know.
No, they definitely said Mafia.
Mafia? Well, I don't know about. Yeah, okay.
And he makes a pass at his adult granddaughter at one point, so that's.
And I don't mean to say that the Japanese culture is, leaning towards chopping off limbs.
Right. No, that's fine.
Exactly what I heard.
I'm just saying it was probably somewhere else, not the mafia here. Yeah. But so he makes a pass at his
one of the things that
granddaughter.
makes his character kind of distasteful is that he makes a pass at his adult granddaughter.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's
Are you married?
problematic.
Yeah.
And then he also makes a gay joke at his
Oh, of course.
at his grandson. It's like, oh, you dress like that? You must be gay, or something like. I don't know.
It's a very good joke.
He makes a joke that's about 10 years too late. And this is about where the movie stops being, this is where the positives end and the bad things begin. This is going to be a 6-pack when the review drops. I'm almost done with it. I'm going to be submitting it tonight or tomorrow morning. There are a few things that are funny just because they're so random, but I do state in my review that if you put a blindfold on and fired a shotgun at a moving target, you might actually hit something. That's the way the humor of this movie operates, because the rest of it is really, really bad. This is kind of like, before we started broadcasting, Bill Leon, you had said that, the Paul Feig method, the Judd Apatow method, to build on that, like a lot of this early 2000s, mid 2000s comedy style was to let the actors improvise while the camera's rolling, and then they keep all the best stuff, because they say that the 40-Year-Old Virgin back in 2002 or whenever it came out.
I think it was 04.
Was it 04? Okay. Judd Apatow brags
so.
that he went through about a mile of film, I think, or maybe it was a couple miles, but he went through a lot of film just filming these actors improvising and riffing. A lot of the scenes in a Madea family funeral are like that, where the characters keep riffing and dropping punchlines, but it's like they didn't edit out any of it. It's just the scene just keeps going while the actors just keep telling jokes and telling punchlines, and they just go and go and go, and scenes just last an excruciatingly long time because the actors got to get in all their jokes. Like this is a hour and 50 something minute movie. It's almost 2 hours long, and it probably would have been 80 minutes if they had just cut off jokes more economically and made the punchlines actually cap the joke off like it's supposed to be. Also, I said in regards to the tone, when they're at the emergency room, where Anthony's gone to the emergency room with his erection and his heart attack, the family argue. Yeah, as they do. And the family's arguing like, oh, why is he here? Like, nobody can give a straight answer, although their son, who was sleeping with his brother's fiance, he knows, but he won't say anything because obviously he would reveal himself to be cheating. They're all arguing, and then the nurse comes out, and Madea and Joe and Hattie and Aunt Bam, they all know what's happening, but Madea doesn't want them to spill the beans because she wants to maintain the equilibrium in the family. And they all they keep slipping and almost saying what it is. Madea slaps them. So there's an extended sequence where Bam and Hattie and Joe keep almost saying what's going on, and Madea slaps them. And that goes on for about 5 minutes. And then the nurse comes out and says that Anthony didn't make it, and everybody's crying and sobbing. And then Aunt Bam and Hattie and Madea keep telling jokes. So you have this moment that's supposed to be very dramatic and emotional where everybody's sad because their dad died. But then you have the Madea characters who just keep joking around, and you even have a goofy musical sting at the end of the scene. So it's a complete tonal disaster. There's not a whole lot else about this movie. I mean, like it's a Madea movie. It's dumb. It's cheaply made. It's brightly lit like a TV show, like a shitty TV show. The jokes are not very good, except for the couple that I mentioned. There is a very extended sequence about Madea insists that everybody who speaks at the funeral only gets 2 minutes to speak. And she'll bully them off the stage at the end of that 2 minutes. But still, every character gets about, like a speech and a song. And through this motif of a spinning clock, the actual funeral ends up taking like 12 hours because, it's a funeral for an African-American person because black people get really into their funerals. It's very basic, very obvious, very, for low-hanging fruit in terms of humor. Like none of it's really that funny. None of it ever amounts to a whole heck of a lot. There's a scene where all of the Madea characters plus Tyler Perry's regular guy Brian character get pulled over, by this white cop who is screaming and yelling at them because white cops are prejudiced against black people. And then he pulls Brian's license and then sends him on his way very calmly and cheerfully. And it's never referenced again. It's weird. The movie doesn't really have any kind of subtext, although sometimes you think that scenes might be hinting at that. They never come back on that or make anything impactful out of it. The characters suck. They're all just one note, like they're one type of personality that only amount to a reason to build towards the final conflict where everything is revealed and everyone's known to have been cheating on everybody else. And there's character moments where they're mad at each other and the movie just ends. It's a standard Tyler Perry Madea movie, slightly more funny than some of the last ones have been, just as mean-spirited, just as meandering, just as lazily written. He cranks these things out in a week. This was filmed in like 6 days before even the second Boo Halloween movie was filmed, and you can just tell it's lazy. Yeah. I have nothing else to say on a Madea family funeral. It's a very bad movie. I laughed a few times. Part of that could have been because I was running on about 3.5 hours of sleep and a full work day, and my brain was just kind of giving up. Who knows? I'm not going to watch it again to confirm or deny that. I'll just say that I laughed a few times. I appreciate a couple things Tyler Perry did in it, but overall, pretty low effort. Also, with this being the last Madea film, there is nothing in the film to suggest that. Nobody, like, Madea doesn't die. Madea doesn't go away or anything. She's not like, I'm going to go on a trip or something like that.
Well, if she said I'll go on a trip, that would suggest another movie.
Yes.
Yeah, really.
Medea's family road trip.
Oh, no.
That's probably going to happen. You have now willed that into existence. Thank you very much.
Chevy Chase's career has probably fallen this far, right?
Yes.
Oh, God. The Griswolds meet Madea.
This movie does have a Mike Tyson cameo.
What?
He's in the movie, like, at the very, 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 very end. The mom of the family, she's like, well, I'm going to Vegas with my new boyfriend. And it's Mike Tyson outside in the car. And he's literally in frame for like 20 seconds. And he's like fourth billed on the cast list.
So Mike Tyson is a pivotal role of a movie that Hawk and I are watching for Sharch, which is Bad Movie March, which was the China Salesman. Now, Hawk, have you finished it yet? I know you said you weren't going to be able to finish it last night.
No, I passed out last night, but I did notice that Mike Tyson is looking rough.
Yeah, and he's also like he's in more scenes and has more lines than Steven Seagal does, and that's not a good thing.
That's not a good thing. Not anymore. No.
So anyway, what that review came quickly, and so in that note, we're gonna move to climax.
We're gonna climax. Yes, I was fortunate enough to catch a press screening for Climax this past Friday. I did not know what to expect going in, other than this was a Gaspar Noé film. I'm a big fan of his ever since Enter the Void, and especially his last film, Love, which I didn't get to see in 3D, but it was made in 3D and it was screened in 3D in a lot of places, and I would have liked to have seen that, considering some of the shots in that movie. You know, like, oh my God, this is very provocative. If this had been in 3D, you know, but because of the era we live in, especially of adult entertainment and everything, it's not as provocative. But if it was in 3D, it would have been. So I was, pretty excited. Okay, Climax, what's this about? A bunch of dancers. Sophia Boutella's in it. Okay. The marketing for this movie doesn't really give away much of anything. So like I said, I had no idea what I was to expect. I was one of only maybe 2 or 3 other critics in the room. So it was a very awkward screening. Because we were all sitting there in various spots. Like, I was all the way in the back, another guy was in the middle, another guy was eating popcorn up in the front, And the movie starts, and it kind of starts at the climax. That's part of the gimmick of this movie, I guess. Throughout the opening, I want to say 10 minutes, there's different credits that say something along the lines of, this is a French film and it's proud of it. Literally, those are the words that come across the screen. Like, this is a French production and we're proud of it. Like, so it's almost like it's a marketing tool in a way to get more French production or something, or maybe bring awareness possibly, or maybe they're just really proud of it. I don't know.
The whole movie's about France, Bill.
It sort of.
It's a melting pot, the horrible, horrible melting pot that is France.
You're kind of right. I'm going to get into that in a second,
Okay.
but these were my thoughts going into this monster. Normally, when you get a movie like this, it starts off, especially Gaspar Noé, it starts off with a crazy title credit. You know, he likes to do the crazy, weird logos over the titles and everything. This movie starts basically with the end credits, and then it chops up the sequence of credits throughout the film. The film is told from a beginning and from an end, but the credits aren't. They kind of come and go in different spots. If there is a narrative, which there is, but it's very, I would say this is like a one sequence movie, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
Kind of like one long take kind of movie, you know, like where it's just, I mean, there's a couple other takes, but this movie is basically one giant long take. The plot is a French dance troupe collecting various people who've been living in France as dancers, working as dancers, specifically young people. They collect these dancers for a program that's going to tour the world very soon. And they just finished a practice routine in a gymnasium school building they've rented out in the middle of a snowstorm sometime in the 90s. And that's when the movie takes place, although it's not as obvious that it takes place in the 90s, but the beginning kind of suggests this. The beginning is basically a television screen with a bunch of VHS tapes and books next to it, and we see a bunch of headshot interviews with the various dancers. So from that, we have to glean what era this takes place in, and that would be the 90s, or as close to it as possible. The practice ends. They do their routine. It's really elaborate and fun. There's a lot of contortion, a lot of beats, rhythm, you know, DJing, all this great stuff. And they start drinking sangria. Soon, however, they realize someone spiked it with LSD, and from there, the movie goes absolutely fucking insane. I described it afterwards as an acid, both literally and figuratively, cannibal movie or acid zombie movie. Take your pick. You know what I mean? Like, this is a horror movie in and of itself. Like, it's weird, though, because as much as it is that, as it is a horror film, it's also kind of a film that's very beautiful and very much about life, in a wacky way. I was reminded of a quote from Peter Greenaway, who did Baby of Macon, and he's done a lot of art films about painters and stuff. Like, he didn't do With Nail and I, did he? Or was that someone else?
That was somebody, I think.
Yeah, I think that was someone else. He did something else though Oh, I know what it is. He did The Thief, the something, and the something. Yeah,
The Lover. Yeah,
yeah. He
the
did
thief,
that one.
the cook, his wife, and her lover.
Yes, and
Is that Did I nail the title?
I think you're right, Bill. Yeah, he did an interview, and someone asked him about art and film, and he described some of the film being kind of a cross section between sex and death, and the reconciliation of those two. Those are the best dramatic stories, and those are the only dramatic stories. Like, every story involves one or the other, or something about it. And this movie reminded me of that quote because it kind of is that. It encapsulates the very essence of of that drama, of human drama. As the movie progresses, as the insanity progresses, as the drugs course through their veins and their minds start devolving and into a different plane of existence almost, we kind of see the inner person of each of these characters come out. Whatever interrelationships were going on within the troupe, some were having, romances, some had their own little tribulations with others, like, oh, I don't like that guy over there, or oh, I really like her, I want to have sex with her, stuff like that. They get kind of graphic and vulgar in their discussions. As things progress, we see these things expressed physically and violently across the screen. And I want to really emphasize this too. This particular one sequence is all, it looks anyway like one single take. The camera is just floating from person to person, and it's just showing how everyone's reacting and responding until eventually the camera itself goes upside down and is capturing everything in neon lights and rhythm, and the lights are going on and off. There's red lights, there's green lights. It's upside down, turned all around. People's bodies are contorting in different positions. It reminded me too of the end of the climax of Suspiria, the new Suspiria, and how I felt during that. Except talk about it extended over like 80 minutes.
Oh well, that's a sale right there.
That's like insane. Now to be fair, the first 15 or so minutes are mostly just them gossiping about each other, and then it gets into the craziness. So, and the movie's only like maybe 90 minutes, so I would say maybe about 65 to 70 minutes are the insanity. And I say that like I'm downplaying it. This is not a downplay. That is the selling point of the movie, is this beautiful, crazy bit segment. And I don't want to there's not much to spoil really, because the only actress that really is in this movie that we know of from previous films, mainstream wise, is Sofia Boutella, and she's great in it, as she normally is, but I can't say there's some surprises in terms of like what happens to the characters here and there, but it's really more like you're just kind of like your jaws dropped, and you're just absorbing these visuals and these weird relationships that are going on as their minds melt into this drug, and as they devolve, and then what it means, if it means anything, which it could or it couldn't. It should also be, I should also note, to bring it back to something Zach mentioned earlier about France, the big gymnasium room where the majority of the movie takes place in has a giant French flag above it. And it's like a very bright, almost transparent-ish flag. Like it's done up in an interesting design. And a couple times it's mentioned that some of the dance troupe members are freaked out by it. They're like, dude, what's up with that French flag? It's kind of weird, huh? That's just right there. I have a feeling this room is like cursed or something, and they're just kind of having little anxiety moments before the real panic happens. And then when it happens, it's like they forgot about that. They're like, holy shit, we're drugged, But the French flag looms over everything. So it's kind of hard not to think that means something. Yeah.
But then you get too deep into it and you're like, so is gas. I mean, it's button pressing. There's two things that you get with Gaspar Noé. He's going to push your buttons.
Yes.
And you're not really sure which way he's trying to push them often. He's just trying to elicit reaction. And the ultimate point of his cinema is to elicit feelings, which in several of his films have been feelings of being drugged. And he probably does it best in this one, even more than Enter the Void.
Yeah, I would
communicates the feeling of tripping on acid and going on a bad trip more so even than depicting it. He's trying to make you feel it.
I would very much agree with that. It's kind of, it reminded me too of what Jodorowsky said about his Dune project. He wanted it to be almost like a hallucination. He wanted it to be kind of like what it would be like to have this grand enlightening moment from drugs. Although his was more of a positive thing. This was kind of like taking the positive and the negative.
Yeah, I think the bit I wrote right after, just the snippet, was world's most effective don't do drugs, Ed.
Yes, I actually said that out loud after the movie. I said, like, just say no to drugs, folks. You know,
exactly.
And no one laughed. Everyone else in the room was just like, yeah, okay.
Go write your article, asshole.
Yeah, no, right? I was like, come on, guys, you gotta admit that was kind of funny, right? Yeah. But no, I think I wrote in my Letterboxd review that so kind of an obscure reference to an earlier Jodorowsky film, Fando Elise, which I said, and you thought Fando Elise was crazy. Like that got no reaction from people, and no one remembers, or not remembers, but because I wasn't old enough to remember. But when you research Jodorowsky, you find out that his first feature film was elicited such a reaction from the audiences, they got up and like rioted, at least in one instance, I think in Mexico. And so I kind of thought, like, all right, I saw a documentary on Jodorowsky where he was also part of a freak out movement of artists in dance interpretists and stuff. And this movie kind of reminded me of that a little bit. Like, it's just these people just doing weird body movement in a room just meant to freak people out. And I was like, oh, that's climax. But more so, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to say. But no matter what, I want to see this movie again almost immediately. I haven't been able to yet because it hasn't officially come out yet in my area. But once it does open, I want to see it again. And I want to see if I can catch any additional Easter eggs, maybe things that I didn't notice before. Because before, I think I was just trying to follow the plot and the characters.
It'd be interesting to look at it from a political lens and see if he has a coherent statement.
Yeah. And if not, if it's just surface level, I think it still works just on that level too. I agree.
It adds
to me, it's a toast of a movie. Like even if it's just provocative, pretentious bullshit, it's still a toast. That's my feeling on it. Like I tend to like think that movies that are made by pretentious filmmakers that are pretentious and full of shit aren't always bad. It just depends on your mood sometimes, you know what I mean? Like sometimes a movie just catches you on the right day and the right time, the right, moment. And if this movie is in fact pretentious and full of shit, which I don't think it is, but if it is, if I find it to be that, I think I'm still going to keep it at a 5-star level just for the feeling it puts in me. And I would recommend you guys check it out on the biggest screens possible. If not, check it out on video on demand whenever it hits, I'm sure.
Which I was about to say, for a movie of this import, the chances of us seeing it on a big screen are not the best. So
I know, but
I wonder about this one. I wonder if this one has a rollout strategy. This seems like the local theater that.
I think it's an A24. It's an A24 distributed movie.
Yeah, so it's A24. It's playing near me this weekend, so I'm definitely going to see it either Friday or Saturday.
Awesome.
I get the idea because the theater I saw it at, it was Los Angeles, but it was like Podunk, Orange County, like mini mall theater that hasn't been upgraded in 30 years. It's not like
my problem is that I have to navigate Boulder, Colorado to see this one, so it's like. It's like, do I want to drive around Boulder at 4:00 on a Friday or at noon on a Saturday? And both of those options suck.
None of us know what you're talking about because we've never been to Boulder.
Yeah.
So imagine a city that was built as a purely hypothetical number. Imagine a city that was built for 100 people now has to have 600 people in it. That's what Boulder.
Oh no.
Yeah. Obviously, the numbers are more inflated than that, but like it's a disaster of of traffic. But
see, the theater in my area that normally plays the independent rare stuff is playing this weekend instead of, say, Climax. Doctor Who, Logopolis.
Oh yeah, that's making the rounds too.
Yeah. So and I guess they do have Apollo 11, which I've heard good things about. So that's something.
Yeah. Well, what's weird about Apollo 11? Not to necessarily jump off the rails, but I guess we do that on this show a lot. I was going to see it last week after Climax. I eventually had to cancel that showtime, but before
you felt too tired afterwards, right?
Yeah, I did feel a little tired afterwards, and also I found out I had to take care of something across the lake, but back at home. But when I was scheduling that showtime, there were two theaters that were playing it. One theater was an AMC, and the other was like a local independent theater. The AMC has an IMAX screen, and Apollo 11 is rolled out mostly in these IMAX theaters. But on that day, it was not shown in IMAX. It was going to be shown regular. And I've had bad experiences at that theater with regular 2D movies that are usually meant for IMAX or bigger screens. Mm-hmm. So I was like, fuck that. I'm going to go to the independent theater instead. Yeah. The movie that got the IMAX slot was Captain Marvel, which we're going to talk about later. But that would have been a good segue. But
I will say, Ken, it is playing the South Barrington 24.
Oh God, that's like an hour friggin' drive from me. Yeah,
I do heavily recommend this movie. I really do recommend.
I'm going to see it this weekend. Like I've been wanting to see it for a while, and I've been waiting for showtimes to appear since the first trailer dropped like 4 months ago. And and you talking about it and what you said about it kind of being reminiscent of the finale of Suspiria. That was the like, yes, I will fucking walk for 2 hours to see this if I have to. Like that, I want to see it. I wanted to see it, now I really want to see it.
Yeah. I would say, particularly for you, Chris, it is a stretch goal sort of film.
Yes, I'll fucking do it. I really want to see that.
Yeah.
It's a stretch goal. The cool part of this movie, besides everything else that's in it, is the running time, which is only like just under an hour and a half, maybe just to add an hour and a half. Yeah. It's got a smooth running time. It's you're in and you're out, and you won't forget it, and you're not tired afterwards. Well, maybe you're tired in one respect, but you're not like physically drained and you got a headache and you're hungry and all that stuff. Yeah, I say that now, but I remember, I felt that way after seeing like Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. As much as I love those movies, I felt exhausted after seeing them. I didn't feel exhausted after this, not physically, maybe mentally and emotionally, but not physically. Yeah, so I was able to drive home, is what I'm saying.
Which is funny because I didn't do that with Suspiria. Like when I saw Suspiria in the theaters, I had to like sit in my car for like a good 5 minutes and just recover.
Well, that was an anxiety-inducing movie. It
really was. Like I was like, oh, like I was shell shocked from the finale of Suspiria. Literally,
I don't know if Climax is shell shocking, but it is. It's definitely its own thing, and that's something that you don't always get with movies.
I think Gaspar Noé is a very impactful director in terms of tone and style. So especially Irreversible that's
probably his most anxiety-inducing movie right there. Is Irreversible?
It's really hard to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of anxiety inducing, I don't know. Tell us about Alita, Hawk.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, Alita Battle Angel is all right.
Alita Battle Angels.
Okay, so this movie has been in development hell for years. This was announced shortly after Avatar. Like now that James Cameron's made Avatar, he's going to make Alita Battle Angel. And when I heard that, I was like, okay, that sounds fucking. High school me thinks that sounds fucking dope. And then, of course, it languished in development hell for a long time, and now it's coming out just now. The first trailers that came out for Alita Battle Angel were off-putting. in to say the least. If you remember the CGI eyes for the main character, where you see them the first time in the trailer, and it's like, Jesus! Like, do you guys have that same reaction? It was really shocking and not good.
You know, honestly, the eye thing, the Disney eye thing, never really bugged me because I get that she's a robot, and I don't know that was enough for me.
It was a little peculiar, yeah.
It was surprising,
odd,
you know, not in a good way. And then as I watched a couple more trailers, I was like, okay, I'm getting used to it. Later trailers kind of appeared to dial it back a bit. I'd have to see some before and after to see whether it was I got used to it or they actually really did retouch the CGI to make it a little less jarring. As it ends up, her eyes are probably the least of this movie's problems.
Okay.
I did not like Alita Battle Angel. Even I saw it with a friend too, and my friend said, "No, that was pretty good." And I was like, "Oh, I did not like that movie." And I think I'm kind of in the minority on this one, actually. Like, a lot of people really enjoyed this, and that's great. You know, good for them. I had a lot of problems with it. This takes place in like the year 2300 something, like way in the future. I don't even remember what actually happens to start this post-apocalypse, but Alita is this robot girl, and her cyborg body was recovered from a dumpster heap, and as it's from sort of like a trash yard dumped from a city that lives above the city. Like you got this kind of like slums down where the story takes place, and then way above them is this like majestic city where the rich people live, and they dump their trash down, and she is part of that trash that gets dropped down there.
So this is Elysium 2?
Yeah, it's Elysium 2, but not as good. I know
Elysium 2, not as good.
Yes, I kind of I liked Elysium. I thought that was a pretty good movie.
Yeah, it was. You know what Elysium was? Elysium was a solid attempt.
Elysium was the first signs that Neil Blomkamp struggles with a feature-length narrative.
Yeah.
And hitting you over the head with a baseball bat.
Yeah, although I did find that movie entertaining, and it was exciting and it was fun.
I did like the body horror element of like the one dude gets his body basically blown to smithereens, and there's like they use that surgical machine to fix him, and he's just not right.
Oh yeah, Shelton Copley gets his face blown off by a grenade, and they make his face, and it's all fucked up. Yeah,
that was pretty cool.
There were some pretty silly science fiction things happening in Elysium that were a lot of fun, but I don't know. Like, Alita is a movie that I really wanted to like, and it's ironic that in the trailers there was this sequence of like this sports style racing sequence. I can't remember what it's called. It's like rollerball or murder ball or something like that.
A rollerball.
It's motorball. It wasn't motorball.
Motorboat.
Basically, cyborgs race down a racetrack and throw a ball to each other and kill each other. Whatever. Who cares?
From what I hear, that plays a lot more into the plot than the trailer insinuated.
No, not really.
No? Oh, okay.
I mean, it's one sequence from what I remember. I mean, this was weeks ago. Like, I mean, this was like almost a month ago. It's one sequence. Anyway, what I'm saying is that in the trailer, I was like, oh, they're doing one of those fucking things, like a sports sequence that was the least interesting part of the trailer, but probably the most interesting sequence in the movie. It was kind of cool. This is a Robert Rodriguez movie, and I have not enjoyed a Robert Rodriguez movie for quite some time, even though I deeply respect Rodriguez as a man and as a director. Like, I think I love his passion for what he does. I love that he loves to cook. Like, I have the El Mariachi box set DVD.
Yeah, the 10-minute cooking school is a great little short.
Yes, his cooking show is so great, and I love how much passion he has for everything. But I just have not enjoyed what he's done for a long time, and this is better than the Sin City sequel, but it's still not very good.
I would argue the last movie he did that I enjoyed was Planet Terror, and that's over a decade ago at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else did he did? But he did the Spy Kids.
Machete Kills, Machete
Kills.
Spy Kids All the Time in the World, Sin City: A Dame to Kill for.
Yeah, I thought Machete Kills was fun, but Planet Terror was awesome.
Oh, and I guess he made a movie called Shorts.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Adventures of the Wishing Rock.
He did that. Oh, my God. I forgot that he did that. That's a bad movie. He also did Shark Boy and Lava Girl in 3D, with starring George Lopez as the villain.
Oh,
That actually came before Planet Terror, though.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Still, it's
Anyway.
Anyway.
It's Alita is. I mean, the plot is that, like, she falls to the ground and her dad, this guy played by Christoph Waltz, is a scientist and it's her dad, and he rebuilds her, and he lost his daughter a while ago, and he rebuilds her in her image, and
her daughter had giant Disney eyes.
Her daughter had giant Disney eyes. No, but the robots do, and there's evil robots that want to kill them. There's bounty hunters. Like it's. I don't know. It's been a long time since I saw it, and I don't really care about it that much.
We can always move on if you're done.
isn't Ed Screen in this?
Yeah, Ed Screen's in it.
It's a shitty big budget movie. Of course, Ed Screen's in it.
You know what? It gets shittier and more big budget because Jai Courtney is also in it for.
Oh no!
Oh no!
He's in one shot, and he's like the champion of the roller murder ball sport thing. And that was a setup for the sequel, which may or may not happen. But if it's got Jai Courtney, it's going to be shitty. Like, he's not been... Wait, he was in Jack Reacher. He was good in Jack Reacher, which ironically was his breakout role.
That's the thing. Neither Ed Screen or Jai Courtney are necessarily bad actors, but they're in a shitload of bad movies, and they're not very good in those bad movies, which is strange.
Courtney is necessarily a bad actor, and he got lucky with a good director in Christopher McQuarrie with Jack Reacher.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say based on evidence.
Yeah. Actually, come to think of it, okay, you're right about Jai Courtney. I guess I can't see a counterexample to that.
But Ed Screen, I'll give him. Ed Screen knows what kind of movies he's in. Like, he was okay in this movie.
He was fine in his scenes in If Beale Street Could Talk. He was.
Oh yeah, he was very good in those.
He's a talented actor. Like, he was in the Transporter Refueled is a very bad movie, but it is a gleefully stupid movie, and I will defend that movie till my death. And if you guys have not seen the Transporter Refueled, I think you do, because it is a fucking blast. Yeah. I don't know if have any of you guys have seen that one?
No, I haven't seen it.
Just to sell you on the Transporter Refueled, there is a sequence where he's being chased by cops on motorcycles, and he power slides through a roundabout, and for no reason whatsoever, there's like 4 fire extinguishers or fire hydrants on this roundabout, and he clips each of them in his power sliding, blowing out water and knocking the dudes off of the motorcycles. Later on, he and his cohorts switch cars to a different car. What's up? And then he tosses the remote to that car into a trash can, and the trash can blows up.
Okay.
Magnificent. I believe it's on Amazon Prime. I highly recommend it.
That's some Aqua Teen Hunger Force shit when, like, in the background, the phone blows up or something for no reason.
It's kind of like that. When they throw something on the ground.
So we'll go ahead and I'm going to mix things up a little bit just because Hawk, you've been talking for a while. We're going to mix things up and have Bill talk about Donnybrook.
I did want to like put one more cap on Alita.
Okay.
Is that I didn't really say much about what it actually is as a narrative or a film. It's problematic because Alita had, shortly into the movie, she learns in a past life that she was a warrior, and that's all she wants to do is become a warrior now and get her super robot suit and become a warrior. And she has no arc as a character. She never grows or develops or has any sort of movement as a person. So she's like, oh, I want to get that thing. It's a video game movie. She wants to get that thing and become more powerful. And the last 20 minutes of the movie are just sequel setup.
As much as the movie was trying so hard to emulate like Japanese anime art design and style, as far as I can tell from the trailers, it sounds to me like the one thing it's lacking is the heart that those movies often have in them.
Yeah, the heart is really lacking, and I think a big part of that is that the guy that plays her boyfriend just fucking sucks. I fucking hate him. Like every scene where there's some action, I was like, kill that guy. He needs to die.
Wow.
Like, and they set it up too. Like there's scenes where it's like, oh, this dude's toast. Same with Christoph Waltz's character. It's like he's gonna die at some point and put Alita on her revenge mission and complete her arc and find her purpose, but none of that ever happens. They just keep going. It's like, yeah, Alita, we did, and he never dies, and it sucks.
Is that your Christoph Waltz impression? Alita, give it.
No, that's the boyfriend impression.
Oh, okay.
Like, Alita, you're the most human person She's like, oh, I'm not human enough. He's like, you're the most human person I've ever met. And they love each other, and it sucks. I hate it.
Gross.
Yeah. So, ew. Yeah. No. He looks like Michael Arengano, or
yeah, he does, doesn't he?
He does, but he's not him, and he's a sucky actor, and he's worse than that guy. And every scene where he's about to die, it's like, yes, please. And then he doesn't, but then he almost does get killed later on, and he gets chopped in half and given a robot body, and then he gets chopped in half again and dies, and it sets up the sequel. And the whole last half hour of the movie is like setting up a sequel. It's like, there's more movies. There's this guy. He's a bad. Edward Norton plays the villain of the entire franchise. Surprise! Like, because Edward Norton appears at the very end of the movie. He's like, haha, I'm the villain. And it
should have been Richard.
Nothing, because
it's like Johnny Depp showing up at the end of Fantastic Beasts.
It's literally like that. It is absolutely literally like that. Except it's more of a jarring thing. Like he gets less screen time. He doesn't have a goddamn line. He just like takes off his mask like rah. Or maybe whatever movie comes next, if it does. So it's not good.
Yeah. No, it doesn't sound
okay. So Bill, tell us about Donnybrook.
I discovered just before I watched Donnybrook that Donnybrook was made by one Tim Sutton, who directed Tim Sutton, 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 who directed. He directed his previous film was Dark Knight. It was kind of about the state of gun violence in this country. It was kind of inspired and influenced by what happened the night of the premiere of The Dark Knight Rises at that theater in Aurora. Yeah. And it's kind of like a mystery, interesting docu-style, but it's also very meditative. This is a weird stylistic movie. It was very good. Hell of a film. This is his follow-up to that, called Donnybrook, starring Frank Grillo.
As apparently Chainsaw Angus is his name.
That's his. I don't think he's ever called Chainsaw, but
according to Wikipedia, it's Chainsaw Angus, which is an awesome fucking name.
That makes it sound like this movie's
we can do this weekend. By the way, just gonna throw that out there before Buck gets further into it. Yes, has it.
So yeah, Donnybrook is about this. It takes place. It's kind of hard to say where it takes place. I believe it's in the Rust Belt of America somewhere.
Kansas.
Yeah, so somewhere around that. Yeah, but it's never really specifically said. At least I don't remember it being specifically said. It could technically be the South. It could technically be parts of the North. It really could be anywhere in America. And I think that's the point of the movie, is to kind of make it this blended setting of Americana. But it makes you remember how there's a place just down the street from you that is impoverished and not as affluent as you are, or maybe it reminds you of where you live, you know? So the movie is about, I forget the main actor's name. Zach, you could probably help me out with this.
Jamie Bell.
Yeah.
Yep. What? Jamie Bell, yes.
I've got the
yes.
cast in front of me.
Jamie Bell,
Okay. Jamie Bell plays an I forget if he was a Marine or if he was just an Army, in the Army, but he's back, and his wife has drug problems. She's been trying to kick drugs all for the last several years, and they live in a trailer or in a trailer park with their 2 kids, boy and a girl. And the movie basically starts with him robbing a place, specifically a gun store. And the kickoff to the movie is that he gets home and he sees Angus and Angus's sister. First he sees the sister, then he sees Angus in his bedroom with his wife. They're not having sex, they're just doing drugs together. And they get into a little fight, and Angus wins the fight by basically putting a gun to his head and like, yeah, bitch, who's the bitch, that kind of thing. The plan is for Jamie Bell to get his family out of town, and so he can go find a Donnybrook fight, which is a fight that is so underground. It takes place in the woods, in like a tent city, amongst the homeless and amongst the poor and amongst the misfits and amongst the miscreants, of America, the forgotten, so to speak. And it's basically a battle royal cage fight that takes place inside of a fenced-in, barbed-wired piece of space of yard. You know what I mean? And it's a battle royal, it's just a slugfest, where everyone's just punching the shit out of each other, choking the shit out of each other, until there's only 2 left. And then those 2 have to fight one-on-one.
Wow.
It's kill or be killed. And the winner gets like $100,000 or $200,000, something like that. It's enough, basically.
When you say kill or be killed, do you mean it's a fight to the death?
It's a fight to the death, yes.
Oh, shit.
And
maybe you can confirm something for me. I did hear this was a stealth sequel to Billy Elliot. Is that correct?
What?
It could be. In a twisted way. In a twisted way, it could.
Because Jamie Bell's the star. Is that why you're going with
in a twisted way, it could be, but I don't believe it is. No.
I thought Snowpiercer was.
We're going to watch this as if this is Billy Elliot.
Okay.
At least that's how I'm presenting it to my wife before we force her to.
Basically, the central thrust of the movie is everyone has to get to the Donnybrook. And that's Jamie Bell's mission. He brings his wife and his little girl to a safe place, and he takes his son with him to go to the Donnybrook at, no matter the cost, they're going to get to the Donnybrook. Whether they have to break the law to get there, whether they have to, rob another store. They even steal a police car at one point. They have to get into other fights. They have to build their way up, that kind of thing. Meanwhile, Angus and his sister are making drugs. You're seeing their relationship. And I didn't even know they were brother and sister at first. It didn't register with me. I thought it was just an abusive boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. Because at one point it looks like she tries to lean in for a kiss, and he's like, "You disgust me," and he spits in her face and slaps her. Frank Grillo is not a likable character in this movie. He is horribly presented, but grandly performed. Frank Grillo does a great job in this movie. He's a very threatening presence. You know what I mean? Very memorable, threatening presence, actually. I had a hard time shaking him after the movie. He is abusive. He is gonna kick your ass. He'll kill you. He don't care. If you're in his way, you're in his way, and you're out of his way in a second. He's the Punisher basically, but without a moral code. He just doesn't really care. He cares, but about himself and about surviving. That's the gist of it between his character and between Jamie Bell, who does care about his family, and they both care about survival, but one is more about the self than the other. The sister eventually finds a way to break away from Angus, and gets with Jamie Bill to at least get to the Donnybrook to maybe split the profit and, go their separate ways, live a life, that kind of thing. At the same time, a local sheriff's deputy, or maybe he is the sheriff of the town, is on a mission to find Angus and take him out once and for all. He's like, I've seen the devil, and that's the devil orders, so some country shit like that, I don't know if I'm selling this movie as well as I could be, but it is actually a very good film, I felt. It kind of hits you over the head in the last few minutes of the film when the Donnybrook actually takes place, because before the Battle Royale happens, everyone stands up for the Pledge of Allegiance, basically. Or not the Pledge of Allegiance, I'm sorry. They stand up for the national anthem, and there's a big flag behind them and everything. This movie is very much about the landscape of America, the economic and the forgotten people of America, which are, the poor and the hungry and, the ones without opportunity, that kind of thing. However, I should note that you don't really see too many people of color in this film. It's mostly like the poor white community. And that's not an issue. That's not a big problem in this, because it's probably just where it takes place, like the very specific areas of the country this takes place in. But given that, you would still think you might see someone who's black or something, but you don't. It's just these really poor, dirty, trashy white people. And especially when they get to the Donnybrook. The Donnybrook is nothing but country, backwater, backwoods, homeless, dirt in your fingernails, black fingernails. It's just grody kind of people,
I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that if you were an African-American, you would not want to go to the Donnybrook, because it seems like
like a racist place, and it kind of, or at least a place where racists would propagate.
Even the word Donnybrook is Irish, and there's kind of a I don't know about where you live, but there's traditional enemies up here in Chicagoland, one of the most segregated cities in the U.S. And there's the Irish and the black gangs and the Italian gangs and the Polish gangs and everything. So
don't really mix well.
Yeah, no, not in Chicago at least.
Not in Chicago at least. Maybe outside of it. Hey, we're outside of Chicago, where everyone's a friend here. The Donnybrook as a movie, and especially as a follow-up to Dark Knight, is very much like I don't want to call it a standard narrative, but it fits that bill more so than Dark Knight. Dark Knight was more of like a collage. This actually has narrative structure. It's very much like ABC kind of thing. But there are some fantastical moments in it where you're kind of taken out of it, and you get to kind of breathe and just let it fall over you as the events happen. Specifically when it comes to I would say when it comes to like the moments where they're driving or even fighting, especially the fighting moments, those you just kind of are like taken out of it for a second and are kind of left in the perspective of those in the crowd watching and cheering. It's not necessarily making a comment on violence, but it is using it as a way to kind of describe the desperate nature of living in America now, or at least for these people, or for a certain community of people. And it's not just about this community of white people. It really is. You get this feeling it's really more about poor people in general. It could be any community. This could be about street basketball if it wanted to be. It could be about other stuff.
It could be about family.
It could be about family. But it happens to be about a battle royale cage match that everyone is going to. It takes place in the woods at the end of a fucking river in a swamp. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like they picked the dirtiest locations they could find, and it's like, this is America, and then you think about it for a second, and you're like, yeah, this is America. They got it right. Tim Sutton got it right. I'm gonna check what I wrote in the.
For time purposes, we really should start moving along because we.
Okay, I'll wrap it up. I'll wrap it up real quick by saying a quote from my Letterboxd review. Just one quote.
All right.
Sutton's America is a purgatory of violence plagued by death and aggression. The dream is a nightmare, and everyone would rather sleep than be awake.
Okay.
That's the quote.
All right. So now we're going to talk Happy Death Day to You.
So I was I actually have not seen the Happy Death Day movies to completion until a couple weeks ago, and I really love this franchise. Have you guys seen these movies?
I have not.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so the first Happy Death Day movie involves this girl who's in college, and she is murdered by a serial killer wearing a baby-faced mask. And then she wakes up again on the morning of her murder, and then she has to figure out who's killing her. So it's kind of like it's like if Scream, Mean Girls, and Groundhog Day got mashed together, and it works way better than that description sounds. Because this is a really, really fantastic series. Like the first movie, she has to figure out who's killing her, because every day that she wakes up, she still bears the internal trauma of having been killed that day. So she only has a finite amount of time before, she'll no longer wake up. So she has to figure out who's killing her. And she figures out, and, everything's fine. The first movie is a dark comedy / horror slasher movie. And then in this new movie, Happy Death Day to You, it's actually a straight science fiction comedy movie. Because they reveal what caused the time loop in the first movie. And I don't know, it's tricky to, I guess I'll say what's going on. It's a mild spoiler, kind of, but not really. The reason for that is because there are some thematic underpinnings of the first movie that work for that movie, but are kind of undone by the second one, but still kind of work. Basically, in the first movie, or I guess both of these movies deal really heavily in grief, which I thought was a very interesting thing. And also both these movies are surprisingly wholesome and positive. Because a lot of horror movies and slasher movies, you see that characters kind of everyone is for themselves, and they get killed, and then everybody dies, and whatever. Nobody ever looks out for everybody else if they don't have to, right? When it comes to slasher movies,
right? But
what was revealed in the first movie is that the main girl, whose name is Tree, Tree, and that's an intentional thematic thing, because the director Christopher Landon, when he rewrote the script, he wanted the character to be named Tree because she grows as a character. She branches out and becomes more. I mean, it sounds dumb when I'm saying it, but it makes sense.
Yes, it does.
It's kind of one of the cool things that you're like, I like both of these movies, and so I think that's cool, as opposed to I'm reading about this movie without knowing anything about it, and that sucks.
Yeah, no, that's true. Like when you're watching the movie, the character being named Tree is an important thing. It's her time looping thing is like it's revealed that her mother had died, and she's been running away from that and avoiding that grief for a long time, and it's turned her into a shitty person. And that's why it's so hard for her to figure out who's killing her every day, because at the suggestion of a friend of hers whose bed she keeps waking up in, she creates a list of who might be killing her and who hates her, and it's a huge list because she's a piece of shit. Piece of shit because she is so guilty about her mother's death. She figures out who's killing her, and then in the second movie, it's revealed that, even though she saw this time loop as a way for her to confront her grief, the actual tangible reason for her to experience this time loop was a fellow university student creating this machine that just started involving parallel universes. And at the beginning of this movie, she gets sucked into a different parallel universe where her mother is alive still, but the boyfriend that she found in the first movie is with somebody else, with her sorority sister, her really piece of shit asshole sorority sister.
So what do you really think of her?
What?
Nothing. You're really pushing the asshole part.
Well, I said this movie kind of involved the Mean Girls movie, and
Right.
that
Right.
sorority sister is like someone in the first. I think it was the first movie. One of the sorority girls comes up with like a tray of lunch, and the sorority sister looks at her really weird. Excuse me. And the sister is like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped breakfast." And she's like, "We all skip breakfast." Like, she's this turbo asshole that is all about image and dieting and everything. Like, Zach, back me up on this.
Yes. No, he's right. They go very much out of their way to make her unsympathetic, to then make her pretty darn sympathetic.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the weird thing about these movies, is that they really pull a lot of character work out of these people. Like, it's kind of styled as a slasher, horror, comedy, science fiction amalgamation, but there's a whole bunch of character work, and this is a shockingly sympathetic and emotional duo of movies. So in any case, she's in this parallel universe, and her mom is alive, but her boyfriend is with somebody else, and she has to decide if with a finite amount of time remaining, if she should stay in this universe where things are, or go back to her original universe where things are, where she knows them. And they still kind of go with the she dies every day thing, because initially she wants to go back to her original universe. So, these science students that she's working with, they have a whole bunch of algorithms that might work but might not work. So they have to test them out. And because she's going to die soon, she can't stay there. So she has to die and then restart the day. And, of course, also memorize the algorithms and know which ones didn't work, so they can know which ones to try next. So this leads to a very funny montage of her killing herself over and over again. So she restarts the day, knows which algorithms don't work, and tries a different one. So this movie also plays into the theme of grief very, very well. I won't necessarily spoil it, but it's kind of like, it involves the concept where she really wants to stay in this universe where her mom is dead, but her mom in this universe is not her true mother. So she has to confront that fact, and she needs to really approach her grief and let go of it in a way that most characters in movies like this wouldn't be able to do. So this repeating universe, repeating reality thing allows her to confront her grief in a way that ended up being very impactful. Again, this is a very thoughtful series. It approaches grief and emotion and character more than these movies normally would.
It's intriguing. I haven't given two thoughts to it because of the whole Groundhog Day thing. I kind of dismissed it, and so I'm now looking like I will.
It's a little poppy and like a little, yeah. These are damn. Well, the first one is a damn good film. I haven't watched the second one, but it sure sounds like it continues.
You said you haven't watched the second one?
I haven't watched the second one yet. No.
Second one sounds like it was written by Richard Kelly.
I'll say that both of these movies got me very emotional. Like there have been recent life events that might feed into that, but like the first movie gets very emotional when she confronts that part of herself, and the second movie when it approaches that sort of thematic element of her being able to talk to her mom after she had accepted her being dead was really, really, it hits really hard. Like these are very funny movies, and they're very well written, like as horror and comedy and science fiction. But it confronts grief and I don't know what else, like mourning, I guess. It confronts grief in a very, very impactful way. It kind of it's one of those movies where it sets aside the comedy for a second. It's like, okay, now we're going to really confront these characters for a second, and then we'll get to the comedy later. Like, it's not one of those movies where it's still funny while it confronts the characters. It gets pretty fucking real. And I really had to applaud Christopher Landon for doing that. The first Happy Death Day made 125 million worldwide, I think, and the second one made significantly less. And during a Twitter thing, Jason Blum was like, "All right, I'm bored. I'm waiting for my wife to get ready for a movie. Let's ask some fucking questions. Just do it." And somebody asked him about Happy Death Day 3, and Bloom said, it's not likely, but it's not impossible, because the second one kind of underperformed in the box office.
Right.
But Christopher Landon has also said that he has some big ideas for a third movie. And the second Happy Death Day 2U does end with a pretty great mid-credit stinger, which would make a third movie pretty funny and pretty great. So I'm really, really curious and really hopeful that they'll do that third one, because it could be pretty fucking awesome. But yeah, these are not just this is not just like a throwaway Blumhouse slasher series. These are really great movies, and I definitely recommend them.
All right. Well, you sold me. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to the climax of today's discussion. That isn't climax.
Wait, that's actually kind of wrong in the context of this movie.
Captain Marvel?
Yes, that could be wrong in the context of this movie, I guess.
Yes. So was Captain Marvel any good?
Bill, lead us off.
You ever seen it?
I really enjoyed it. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel during the film. Like I kind of went from at its low point, I went to a 3 in my mind, like a 3 out of 5, or 2.5 even. And then at its highest points, I went to a 4. And then by the end, I kind of settled and came up with a score that I liked. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed Captain Marvel. I felt like, I think I wrote on Letterboxd that it was like Green Lantern done right. Like, they actually kind of got that similar type of hero, you know, a pilot who becomes like a starfighter, you know, in outer space. You know, this one doesn't have a ring, but this one does have energy powers, you know, and can fly by himself and all that kind of stuff, and has to deal with aliens and other races and whatnot. I kind of thought, all right, this one did it much better. Where does it stack in the MCU? Obviously, a lot of people are going to make comparisons and draw their own conclusions. I honestly don't care about such things. They're fun to make, the rankings. Like, oh, Doctor Strange is here, but Captain America Civil War is here. But really, I mean, did the movie work for you? I mean, yes, it very much did for me. Is it one of the best in the MCU? It's probably one of the more middle to very good level movies, like where it's kind of like if there was a class system of MCU movies and you got lower class, middle class, and upper class, this would be like upper middle class.
This is the bourgeoisie.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
Yeah,
around, upon seeing it, I was around the same way. Although I think upon reflection, it's going to be ranking a little bit lower for me. I think my biggest takeaway from Captain Marvel is that it is a pretty poor action movie, science fiction movie, and Marvel movie. But it is pretty strong in terms of character and writing and comedy. Like they got Anna Borden and Ryan Fleck to write and direct this. They did Half Nelson and what?
Sugar.
Did he Sugar?
Yeah,
Did Sugar. It's a good movie.
And Mississippi, something on Mississippi.
Mississippi Grind.
Mississippi Grind, thank you. Yes, and a few others. Like, they're very talented writers and directors in terms of character development and like just people. And the movie was pretty good. And I was talking to a friend the other day where Captain Marvel, she thought that it wasn't a very good movie in terms of. She texted me and said, "I thought Captain Marvel was pretty stupid. Not gonna lie." And we talked about it, and she felt that Captain Marvel didn't really have much of an arc. And I somewhat agree in that she didn't really grow so much as a character in terms of having experiences and building on herself, but she did kind of recognize her own strength and move past her own anxiety and fear, which I thought was a decent.
That
Yeah, but she doesn't really You know what? I buy that. I buy that for $1.
You
Captain
what?
Marvel doesn't have anything of an arc. She's kind of a really. That's interesting. I didn't think about it from that perspective.
I don't know. I don't really agree with that. I would argue that
how is the brash, confident, overpowered ass kicker in the first scene any different than the brash, overconfident, overpowered?
Well,
confident, overpowered. You know, she's not overconfident. She's, you know, an ass kicker.
Well, yeah, I would argue that she's a lot more aware. You know what I mean? Like she's realized plot reasons.
She was unaware of herself because of plot.
But also having been bamboozled by. That's part of the spoilers of the movie, I guess. But we're not gonna. I mean, I don't know. Should we get into that? I don't know if that's.
I'll say unequivocally that my interest in seeing this movie is directly proportional to your ability to sell it on me.
All right, so should we do this?
Okay, here's the reason to watch the movie for real.
It's a huge spoiler.
It's going to be one of the large keys to the solution to the Infinity War problem.
So
you are interested in that overall arc.
My interest is waning, but okay.
But I mean,
I did appreciate that. It's when the screenings were first going, one of the first Twitter responses was, "Wow, Thanos is fucked."
That's what they want you to. I mean, that's what they've been setting up all along, right?
Since they're not wrong.
Started stinger, and then the other.
So they introduce a new character who all of a sudden can take on Thanos, and all of these other characters we've spent the last decade learning.
Maybe not by herself, but she's going to be an important part to whatever puzzle locks into place to flip.
Yeah, we don't 100% know story-wise how they're going to get to Thanos, if they're going to get to Thanos. If Captain Marvel's going to be the key to it.
I mean,
it was suggested in one of the teasers that Ant-Man's going to be the key to bringing.
I mean, it's
bringing life back. That might be ironic in a lot of ways because Ant-Man's kind of a goof, but a goofball as a character. He's a good character, but a goofball.
He can get a dimension or whatever.
Wasn't it Squirrel Girl who was like the only person who really kicked Thanos' ass at one point?
I think that was Dr. Doom, but it may have been Thanos. I know there was a comic panel where she attacks Dr. Doom with an army of squirrels, and Dr. Doom's like, "Squirrels! Ah! Yeah, you spoiled me once again, Squirrel Girl."
I would say watch it because it's going to play into that for sure.
That would be cool. They did a Squirrel Girl thing, but as far as this movie goes, as far as Captain Marvel goes as a movie, it had a lot of elements in it that I did. I thinking about it some more. Yes, her arc is kind of restricted and limited, very limited.
I think the character's arc, based off of the post-credit scene, because there always is one, happens almost entirely post-film, in between the two films. I think we're going to see more of an interesting arc when we figure out whatever the heck happened in the interim. Than we saw through the entire film here.
Sure. Although I will say that, like, the best part of the film by far was how in the middle portion it was just a Brie Larson and Samuel L. Jackson buddy comedy.
Yes.
Yeah, that was very fun.
I even ceased being creeped out by.
What? Oh, I was going to
say. I even ceased being creeped out by Samuel L. Jackson's rubber features after about 25 minutes.
I thought that was pretty strong. I thought SLJ was pretty good.
It became strong. Oh, he's great. I'm hearing his voice. He's funny.
Coulson was a little bit more distracting. Although your movie, Your Movie Sucks YouTube, he mentioned that the de-aging tech on Samuel L. Jackson was very convincing. Although there was that point where he was distracted by the fact that Fury was petting Goose the cat, and then when he had to get up, he stood up like he was 70. because he was like got on his knees like oh, at that point it was pretty obvious that it was a reminder that Samuel L. Jackson is a 70-year-old man.
Okay, so when I see Captain Marvel, I'm totally gonna watch for that, and I'm gonna say if I notice like Samuel L. Jackson is a 70-year-old man.
Those
There's
moments
definitely
are
a reason.
pretty.
Any action scene,
Yeah, those moments are pretty funny. But we do see Fury's personality a bit more. He's not a complete joker, but he does have more charisma. In the other movies, he's more stoic and serious and
he's really more of a cipher in those.
He's
movies.
kind of a dick.
Yeah. This is the
but he kind of has to be a dick
story as much as it is Captain Marvel origin.
This is Nick Fury being more of a human, and finally, he's got like more human qualities than we've ever known him to have, and and they reveal, or at least at first they play around with the idea that this is the movie where we're going to find out how he got his eye patch. And at first they fuck with you by saying, oh, he got it this way, and then he's like, no, my eye's fine actually. And then later in the movie it happens, and it's like, oh, that's how he just kind of lied to everybody.
Yeah,
it's a funny face. It's a funny running joke. It actually worked for me. I had no problem with that. However, it does kind of mess with the idea that in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, he was like, the last time I trusted somebody, I lost an eye.
So at what point did he go into the machine that turned him into Samuel L. Jackson from David Hasselhoff? Because Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. was from 1998, so it's like perfectly in the timeline here.
Yeah, okay, right. That would have been interesting. They do have they have probably the best Stan Lee cameo in the MCU. One of the best Stan Lee cameos. He's reading the script to Mallrats, and he's trying to memorize his lines. And Brie Larson's Captain Marvel, looks at him and smiles. And I was kind of like, oh, that's sweet.
It was sweet. Like, and I keep seeing people saying online that like, oh, Brie Larson has no personality in this movie. It's like, well, she kind of
she does. She kind of does. It's kind of her whole thing.
Yeah. She has a lot of personality. She's just very stoic as a byproduct of her militaristic training, and you kind of see some of that personality leak through sometimes. But I think that this movie was a lot. She was kind of working against the grain as a character in this movie. Like, she has to be this kind of stoic character in terms of
also has
where she's at.
But she's also like very passionate too, right? So like the first, the whole thing about like her training, it's like, you show passion, you don't show enough control. And the Kree are all about control and stoicism. So there's a little bit of a war in her character on that. So it's not like I think she did a good job.
She did, yeah.
Yeah, my main issue with the character is that just like all of a sudden, all of the powers. It was just like,
I
we wrapped up pretty fast here.
I had no problem with that because
it was
up
and has a.
See, I had no problem with that because that was
like I'm flying
a personal.
I guess I should see if I could fly. I can.
No, I had no problem with that because it was like she was holding herself back. And so now she was
gone with it, but I still think it was a little.
Maybe it was, but it wasn't. I dug it.
Like I agree. Like that, she was holding herself back, but I think the way that they filmed the movie, it didn't really translate from script to screen in that way. Like you have Anna Boyd and Ryan Fleck who are making indie films and all this shit. It's like, okay, here's $90 million to make a Marvel movie, and I think they weren't quite there yet.
Well, that's why you have. Yeah, I agree. I think
that's possible.
This here and there. The other thing is the action.
And then had somebody else direct the movie, that would have been even better.
Yeah, well, they kind of do. So, like the Marvel Machine, they have their action directors, right? The thing that surprised me about this film is that the hand-to-hand action is kind of terrible.
It's shitty. The action in this movie is really bad.
Yeah, I mean, the superheroic stuff, the more CGI stuff's kind of cool. Like, that's not too bad. There's cool things that happen, but like the hand-to-hand combat is bad, and it's just like, you can make Tom Cruise, who's like 4'11", look like a bruiser. You can make Brie Larson, who is probably larger than him, or Samuel Jackson, who is old, sure, but
Yeah, no, the action, the hand-to-hand action is chaotic quickly edited and very dark and very confusing, and it just looks like shit.
Which if Bowden and Fleck were responsible for those scenes, you're like, oh, okay, they've never done anything like this before. But like they specifically keep a stable of action directors over there to help your Joe Russos and your like
Taika Waititi's.
Yeah, all these guys that don't do action, like they have people who should know action and are specifically second unit directors that do this. Like, where are those people at?
This is probably, in terms of action, probably one of the worst Marvel movies. Like just the action elements, the sci-fi elements are completely mismanaged in this movie. Like the character stuff is pretty good. The action sci-fi Marvel stuff is really bad. Like,
I think you nailed it. I think the reason why you watch Marvel films, they still nailed. Because ultimately it is the thing that Marvel does better than DC or anybody else has really tried it, is character and making you care about them. And that still works here. It's still worth your time. But the other stuff that Marvel sometimes falls short on, they often fall very short in this film.
It also has this kind of like Will Ashton pointed this out, is like it has this kind of samey look to it. Like it's a weird movie because it has the plot of a Marvel Phase 1 movie that should have been made about a decade ago, but it also has this cosmic space feel of latter-day Marvel movies, but it kind of has this really generic Marvel feel to it. But, when it's not in the action and the cosmic space stuff, the 90s stuff had this really distinctive look to it. Like there's a car chase sequence that I felt came out of Speed. Like it feels like a early 90s car chase sequence, like the way it was filmed, the way it was shot. Like it has this look to it that was very comforting in terms of that era. But then all of the other Marvel stuff is like, all right, yeah, this is, what Guardians of the Galaxy, Thor Ragnarok, like it's not bad, it's just more of the same of what I know.
All right. Well, any closing thoughts on Captain Marvel to summarize then?
I feel like Zach might have built on what I was saying, but he didn't.
Marvel ... you're going to watch these.
Yeah, I'm a little more positive on it than that, but I didn't hate it. But ultimately, go ahead.
I would say what the trailer, I guess, real fast. Sorry, I would say what the trailer promises, which is that I think the most strongest piece of the trailer, which is the sequence of her falling down as a little girl, and then as a teenager, and then like getting up, and that getting up, brushing herself off, and whooping ass, like. That is the Captain Marvel attraction in me. And I say when they focus on that arc and they keep coming back to that sort of concept, it's strong.
Yeah, that was the coolest part of the movie, is when they had the montage of her standing back up.
There's a reason why they call it a cockpit.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I was okay with that. Although they
no, I was okay with that.
That's the line in the movie.
I was okay with that too. I was actually shocked they had it in the movie. I was like, "Oh my god!"
You should smile thing felt a little too easy.
The what?
Yeah, the you should smile part was a little too easy, but
smile more or something like that. I was just like,
but it wasn't that bad. I didn't know.
Come up with another stock sexist phrase. I'm sure there's plenty to choose from.
There's a really funny running joke on Reddit where at the end of the movie, Nick Fury is he's typing out, like, I can't remember what his initial his
Protector.
So this is the 90s, right? There's a whole bunch of 90s stuff, Blockbuster and Radio Shack and shit like that. And Nick Fury is typing out whatever his precursor was to the Avengers Initiative. Did you say what it was, Bill?
Protectors Initiative.
Yeah, the Protectors Initiative. And then he sees a photograph of Carol Danvers, Brie Larson, Captain Marvel, saying, "Oh, it's Carol Avenger Danvers." And he's like, he does that thing where he's like, I've got a better idea for this title. And so he changed it. So there's this running joke on Reddit where he changes it to the Carol Initiative. And so you got it's not the Avengers, it's the Carols.
The Carol's Age of Ultron.
Carol, Age of Ultron.
Captain America, the first Carol.
Yeah, so so there's this hive mind of Reddit that imagines that he got
it wrong.
Saw a different word in that photograph.
There's so many dick butt memes. I think you can make out of a few of those scenes as well.
Yeah.
He just looks up and there's a dick butt on the cock.
Captain Marvel is okay. Like it's got a lot of problems, but it's very enjoyable to watch. It's just one of those ones that gets less good the more you think about it.
It's a Marvel movie.
It's a Marvel movie. It's like middle to lower tier. It's again very enjoyable. It's just really it's troublesome to reflect on.
Yeah,
so Captain Marvel, it's a Marvel movie. Captain Marvel, it's a movie.
You call her like? There's this really weird thing where the Captain Marvel is a character in the movie, and or it's. I don't remember. It wasn't Captain Marvel, but anyway, the character that comes before her is also called that, but it's pronounced Marvel.
Yeah, Marvel.
Oh, it's Marvel, and then Nick Fury's like, "Oh, Marvel sounds cooler."
Yeah, there's a lot of cheesy shit like that.
It's a lot of cheesy shit.
Marvel sounds like someone from Krypton, but that's DC.
It's funny.
I think the original Captain Marvel was.
Thought that it was something that they were just intentionally pronouncing differently on purpose, but like you see a title card that says MAR-VELL, so like they're very intentionally making it a different pronunciation for this character, and it's kind of weird. I don't know. It's a pretty good movie. It's not great. It's fine. It's a Marvel movie. What else are you looking for?
Pretty much.
All right. Well, on that note, I probably should have just hit stop broadcast there. That would have been the perfect awkward moment to end this one on. But that's,
but fuck it.
Yeah, but fuck it. We'll keep.
Fuck it.
Yeah.
Keep listening to us.
So this weekend's big releases are Captive State, Wonder Park, 5 Feet Apart.
Yeah.
Hey.
Well, I got.